Thank you. Jason. First of all, this is a great, I mean, the speakers you have had yesterday, today, it's unbelievable, but could I up the dream? Next year, it should be down the street at the Nissan Center. And it should be packed by people. And then maybe after that, we'll go to Dallas and we'll do it at Dallas Cowboys Stadium. This should be heard by men all over the country and the world. The last two speakers have been unbelievable. If my wife were here, she'd be like, hurry it up, I'm hangry. So I apologize. And I don't know what I can bring except, first of all, I want you to know, please, it won't be that short. I just have to start with my testimony of Jesus Christ. I am an alcoholic. I grew up in an abusive family. Mark's story and my story are kind of similar. My dad never took me fishing. We never did anything really as a family. I'm also on vacation here because this is important. But my vacation this time, my daughter just turned 18, and so we're going together, just the two of us, for a vacation and doing something that she wants to do with her life, and I'm going to try to help her learn how to do that. That's something my dad didn't do. But you can break the cycle. My mother committed suicide when I was 13 years old. She was an alcoholic. My father was an alcoholic when he died. And child abuse happened in our family and in his family and in his family. For generations it happened. And it was my decision after I sobered up. We're going to break this in our family once and for all. And it is hard to do. And there's only one way to do it. Surrender to Jesus Christ. That's it. And that's what our country needs to do. And unfortunately, the only way you can do that is if you're driven to your knees. I had no other place. I was on my carpet. I was living in an apartment complex. I had lost my family and my children and my job and everything else. And I was on the carpet in this little apartment that I called the United Nations building because I was the only one that lived there that spoke any English. And I remember being on the ground, feeling sorry for myself. And I realized I was either going to repeat my mother's life, or I was going to get up every day after and beg the Lord for help. 3 years later, I was baptized, and my life changed overnight. Whatever is happening in your life, shed it. Shed it. You are so much more powerful. Believe me, I wouldn't be able to be here today. Mark knows about the media. He wouldn't make it. I wouldn't have made it if I had something to hide. You terrify people when you have nothing to hide. You're like, well, we're going to be looking into you. Go ahead. And you terrify them. Our founders and many of the heroes in our country, they didn't have anything to hide. At 8 years old, George Washington wrote a book on civility. At 8, not because it was an assignment, but because he wanted to discover what it meant to be a good man. He served his whole life. His mother refused to let him go, and I thank her for this one, refused to let him go into the British Navy at, I think he was 14 years old. He was a surveyor when he was 13, by himself in Indian territory, bear territory, no gun, just his compass, a piece of paper, and making maps. This guy was serving others his whole life. When he went to try to join the Navy, he actually did, and in those days, he picked up all of his stuff and he put it on the ship, and his mother was down at the bottom of the gangplank, and she was very dramatic and just a pain in the... And she, oh, George, please, no, don't go, you cannot leave your mother. And all the guys on the ship must have been looking at him like, geez, I understand why you're on this boat, man. And he finally picked up his stuff and put it down next to her, and he said, Mother, if by my side you need me to be, that is where I shall be. Then, when it came time for him to serve, he didn't want to be the general. He kind of sucked at being the general, honestly. He wasn't a general. He didn't want it. Mark was just saying about it. I'm telling you, when I was a kid, I wanted to be famous. Oh my gosh, I was famous, and it took me into alcoholism. Be careful what you wish for. Now almost everything, every hero that I will tell you about, trust me, you're close to food. Every hero, they didn't want to do it. None of them wanted to do it. George Washington, when they said, you could be the commander-in-chief, he said, no. Come on, guys, I know there's a bunch of you in here. You don't like me, and you've got a lot of stuff bad to say about me. You probably feel bad saying it with me in the room, so I'm just going to walk out, and please feel free to say that. That's how much he didn't want it. Then came the Constitutional Convention, because our country had Articles of Confederation that were just too weak. So how do we build something that can still hold the states together while providing freedom and not the kind of government we have today? It was in a rainstorm. The whole country was falling apart. All that they had fought for was about to be lost. A horse comes up to Mount Vernon. All the man ever wanted to do was be a farmer at Mount Vernon. That's it. That was his dream. I want to be a farmer at my home in Mount Vernon. The Articles of Confederation fail. There's a knock on the door in the middle of the night. General! He comes down and the lightning flashes in the rain and opens the door. And there stands a man who had ridden through the night from Philadelphia to say, General, we can't call everybody together. No one will come. The Articles of Confederation are too weak, and you're the only man that they'll come and sit in the same room with. Why? Because of his honor and his integrity. He was a man, and I don't know a man like this, he was a man that could walk into a room and the entire place would fall silent. If people are being boisterous and loud, he could just, with a look, shut it down. Not out of fear, out of respect. When we won the Revolutionary War, at the very end, here are these farmers that went and just bested. It's like all of us, if I got together and said, hey, let's go take on SEAL Team 6. And what the heck? The Green Berets too, let's do it. That's what they were doing. They were farmers against the strongest army and navy in the world. And when it was all over and they won, Congress refused to pay them. And they were angry. And they said, this is dishonorable. They owe us this money. Washington knew exactly what was coming. It was another revolution. They were going to go and kill Congress. He begged them not to. He raced on his horse to Congress. No one would support him except one guy in Congress. He wrote a note. Washington said, could you just write that down? All the note said was, I will work tirelessly to get you paid. One guy. He puts it in his pocket. That's all he has. He races back to camp. They're all gone. They're all meeting secretly. He knows where they are. He knows what they're planning. He opens up the door. They're all screaming at each other, planning the deaths of Congress. He walks through the door. The place falls quiet, but they're not reverent like they used to be. They'll challenge Washington now because they're sick and tired of the dishonor. He says, gentlemen, I know what you're planning on doing. We did not replace one tyrant just to topple him and replace him with another tyrant. You must not do this. They won't pay us, General. That's dishonorable. We need our pay. Why shouldn't we go? What did you talk to them about? Did you bring us our pay? He said, no, but I did bring a message. There was nothing in that message. He reaches into the pocket to grab it. Now, he never wore glasses. You never saw him in glasses. Because he was a giant, nobody thought they could kill him. He would walk off of the battlefield, and there would be holes through his coat. 3 separate battles, he walked off the battlefield with a bullet hole through his hat. He was invincible. And he was a giant. The average man was 5'6". He was 6'3". Kind of an easy target in the crowd. 6 stallions were shot out from underneath him during war because he was right up front. He seemed invincible to the men. He was embarrassed by his teeth. He was embarrassed by his age. So he was never seen in glasses. His aide de camp was standing behind him. It was Alexander Hamilton. As he pulls this out, he realizes, I can't read it without my glasses. He looks to Hamilton. Hamilton hands him his glasses, and he puts them on. And as he puts them on, for the first time, the room is silent. He knows what has happened. The men are seeing him now simply as a man. He looked up with tears in his eyes. He said, I apologize. My eyes have grown weak and weary in the service of my country. This is what the room sounded like after he said it. He took his glasses off, handed them back to Alexander Hamilton, walked out the door. No second revolution. The man's character. So as he is answering the door with the lightning flashes behind him, sir, you have to come to Philadelphia. You are the only one that could hold it together. He said, have I not yet done enough for my country? And slammed the door. In my mind's eye, I see him getting to the banister of the stairs right by the front door of Mount Vernon and putting his hand on the banister. No, I haven't. He went back, opened the door, rode to Philadelphia. He said very little during the convention. But if it wasn't for him and the honor that he had built since he was a child, we wouldn't exist. This is an honest to God's truth. I collect documents. We have the 3rd largest document collection behind the National Archives and the Library of Congress. We have all kinds of different things. I went to meet with the head of the Smithsonian, the American division of the Smithsonian, and I asked him, I'm looking for bad things about George Washington, because I think we have to teach our children the truth about the bad things that we have done. We are the greatest nation in the world. We are, but we are also flawed people with flawed people running it, and most of us haven't paid attention enough to know all of the horrible things that we have done. And if we don't teach those things to our kids, along with all of the glorious things, they will be surprised and they will turn their back on her. So I asked, I could find bad things on everybody. I can find things about Abraham Lincoln with prostitutes before he found God. But I can't find anything on Washington. I said, do you have anything? He laughed and he said, oh, I've got one thing. Come with me. And he opened up this drawer, and in it was a newspaper. And he opened it to the op-ed section, and there was an editorial about George Washington before his second run for presidency. This is the worst thing we could find, and it was written by his mother. who wanted him back home with her. And she said, "Oh, you have no idea. You would never vote for him if you knew how extravagant he was, if you simply knew how much money this man spent on ice cream every month alone." That's the worst I can find. I don't know anybody but Jesus that's in the neighborhood. There's nobody. But we have a chance because we have children. And we can raise them to the light and the truth. And the only way that will happen, I got to tell you, my kids, oh, geez. There are times that I'm like, I swear to you, your mother must have been screwing around because you didn't come from me. Oh, and she looks at me and she's like, nope, they're both yours. It is hard to raise a kid. It is hard to do the right thing, especially in today's world. But we must, because the challenges that are coming before us are historic. If you didn't understand that this week, you'll never get it. This country is on the edge. Freedom is so fragile. Civilization, we all knew it. Somehow or another, we all knew it on September 11th. Each one of us, we looked at each other on September 11th and said, this whole thing could fall apart. This could be done. We knew it. We woke up secure on Tuesday morning, and by Tuesday night, we wondered if our nation would last. Well, this has been a slow impact. We won't make it through the next New Year's if men don't stand up, men of God and peace, people who understand the full armor of God. That's not sending you into a war with a gun. That's sending you into battle with God and the truth and peace and the sword of that truth, His word. They are afraid. Why do you think they're silencing everybody? They are terrified of the truth. Speak the truth. If you don't know how to find the truth, get your face back into the scriptures. The only thing that will be your compass now in these confusing times, because remember, even the very elect will be deceived. You must be one with the Spirit of God. You must have the ever-present Spirit of the Holy Spirit with you. And when it says turn around, go back, head the other way, you better do it. And it's a muscle. The more you obey, the stronger the voice gets. Let me tell you one more story. My wife gave this to me as a Christmas present one year. I was told by my father one time. I was 16, and we were having an argument, and I wanted to, you know how you are as a teenager. You just want to in the chest with your words. And I looked at him and I said, I will never be like you. And I walked away for a brief moment feeling that hurt. Hurt me, but it hurt him. 15 minutes later, he knocked at my door. He came in and he said, I've never been more proud of you, which pissed me off even more. He said I didn't want to be like my father either, and I've tried. But let me tell you something that I have learned. If you don't replace the image of me, if you don't have in front of you the image of who you want to be, I warn you, my son, you will be exactly like me. So I surround myself by people who are better than me. If you ever come to my company, people always say, you have such great people that work here. And I'm like, yeah, I know, because I want to be like them someday. I have pictures of heroes on my desk at the office, at home. I surround myself with people I can feast on. I read history to feast on all of those people. One thing Martin Luther King, Abraham Lincoln, Moses all had in common. Not me. No, I don't want to do that. They all knew the costs they would pay. All of them. No, not me. I don't want to. The other thing they had in common is they did. Every single hero I can name, I can tell you, they were either dead set against doing it or they were terrified. What made them heroes is they conquered their fear for what they had to do. My wife gave this to me. Christmas, it was all wrapped up. And then she immediately took it back. And she said, I can't give this to you on Christmas. And I said, why? It's my Christmas present, right? And she said, yeah, but you're going to spend all day crying. And it's Christmas. And I said, I'm not going to spend all day crying. I spent all day crying. Jeez, I'm going to do it again. This is from one of my heroes. A man I hope I don't ever have to be like. But I live my life in such a way that if it has to be that way, I am prepared to live like this man. His name was Raoul Wallenberg. Most people don't know who he is. He is a huge hero in Sweden. I did an interview with a woman who just about 2 years ago wrote a book about him. She came to do a book tour in America. She was on the Today Show and everything else. She got into my studio. I first brought her into my office to talk to her, and she started to cry. And I said, are you okay? She said, you're the first American who has ever heard his name. He did something in World War II that our government asked him to do. To go to Hungary and find out what was happening to the Jews. He had no reason. He was wealthy. He was an architect. He was the son of what we would relate to as Macy's department store. Wealthy. His nation had already been invaded by the Nazis. The king was on edge. And we came to him and said, we need you to go into Hungary and be an attaché with your ambassador and give us information on what's happening to the Jews. So he did. And he collected information for months, and then he left the country, brought it to the U.S. ambassador, and nothing happened. He went back. This time, a few months later, he brought even more to the English. They did nothing. In desperation, a few months later, with even a bigger stack of evidence, he brought it to the Swiss, and nothing happened. And he decided too many people are dying. And so he began to make these. It's called a Schutzpass. It's a letter of protection and eventually led to a bogus passport from his country, Sweden. And he wasn't like Oskar Schindler, who saved, how many was it? 500, 200, 300? He saved over 100,000. With this paper, he would type them all out and leave a space just to write names in. He would sign every single one of them. And then he would go to the train stations or wherever they were collecting the Jews. And at the trains, he would shove all of these papers between the slats of every car. And then he would go to the front and say, "Stop this train! You have my people on this train. They're under my protection." He eventually bought the building, the block, the entire block next to the embassy. And he housed Jews and got them out of the country. The king called him and said, "What are you doing? The Nazis are here. They're going to kill all of us. Stop," he said. "If you want me to stop saving people, you will have to come here and stop me yourself." I have one of the last shush passes he gave to a woman, a Jewish woman, and she begged him, please leave. It was towards the end of the war, and the Russians were coming in. The Nazis were fleeing. And he said, "There's too many yet to save." And she said, "But the Russians are here." And he said, "They cannot be as bad as the Germans." He was last seen running into the arms of a Russian unit seeking their assistance. He was never heard from again. There are three ends of this story. One is that he was shot on the site. Highly unlikely, because he didn't know that Stalin knew who he was and what he was doing and wanted to personally interrogate him in Moscow. So the second ending of that story is that he was interrogated and died in a concentration camp in 1951. The last, most tragic, is the rumors that he died in a hard labor camp in 1971. We asked him to go. And the first president to ask, "Where is Raoul Wallenberg?" was Ronald Reagan. Dishonor, dishonor, dishonor. But even in dishonor of our nation, he helped. He did the right thing. It cost him his life, but I cannot wait. Even if I'm on the other side of the pearly gates and I can shake his hand through the bars. Heroes, they're all around us. Every time you see a hero, you'll see a monument or a statue, and they're always bigger than life. They're not. They weren't. They were afraid. They were unsure. They just were doing what they thought was right. That's you. That's you. That's you. That's you. And everyone, all of your children, it will not be my generation that saves this country and fully repairs it and goes back to the things we all said we found self-evident, but how many do? That all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the government is instituted among men to protect those rights. That's what we're standing for. This is our time. This is your call. God bless you all.